Quantum Journeys Hypnosis.com. Okay, cool. Um, we're already recording. I pressed it already.
I saw that.
Well, sounds good. All right. Today on Open Loops, we have somebody who I've wanted to have on this show for a long time. Her name is Kryssa Marie Bowman, certified hypnotist, NLP, and hypnotherapy practitioner, the founder of the Quantum Journeys Hypnosis Academy, and a lot of synergies between everything I'm about and what Chris is about. She also hosts this podcast where she's talking about the intersection of hypnosis, quantum physics, the metaphysical, neuroscience, very much involved in the hypnosis community, and also someone that isn't afraid to speak out against, against BS in the hypnosis community, which I admire. I like that. I think sometimes people hold things a little too sacred here.
Gets me into some trouble once in a while, though.
but we'll dissect that. We'll see if you've got a good point here. Kryssa, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Absolutely. It's my honor. Thank you for having me, Greg. It's only been over a year in the making.
Yes. You you just seem you're a person with perspective. There's a lot of rah in the hypnosis community. It's like a lot of people go to these, and I think it's great. I think it's cool that people, I think it's kind of like, oh gosh, I get sickened by the gushiness of it sometimes. It's like, oh, I'm going to sign up for the course, and then I'm going to keep talking about how amazing this trainer is, and then I'm going to see 2 clients, and then I'm going to start training people, and you're going to see how amazing I am, and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, that's great. And it's great that this is changing things in the world, because I do think the mind technology needs to get out there. But also, it leaves room for cult-like worship. It leaves room for training procedures that aren't ethical sometimes. And worse, probably the biggest crime at all, it leaves room for exceedingly boring people becoming hypnotists. At least that's my big critique right now.
Maybe that's their superpower. They hypnotize through total boring their clients to pieces. That's funny.
Yes, no. I mean, look, I'm half joking about the last bit, though I have talked about this quite frequently, how I get annoyed by, hypnosis summits where, like, I'm bored by the talk. I feel like if you're a hypnotist, I should never be bored by a presentation, even if it's technical. I'm like, you're supposed to mesmerize me.
Right.
You're supposed
to
pull me in.
Find rapport, right? And finding rapport with an audience is really no different than finding rapport with a single person. A lot of it comes from within you, though, like allowing your energy to reach up and connect with people instead of expecting them to reach out and connect with you.
Yes. You seem very naturally. I mean, as I've seen you, even in the past year, appear on more people's shows and get involved with more teaching curriculums and co-teaching things and speaking at Hypnothoughts and all these things that you do, teaching classes. It seems like it's pretty natural for you. I mean, were you always this kind of outgoing person? Like, where's this coming from?
I actually had agoraphobia for a decade and a half. So I hid inside of my world, inside of my house, away from everyone. It does come naturally, but because the agoraphobic symptoms were a trauma response that were keeping the true me from being able to express myself. So the part that comes naturally, though, I don't know how much I should say, but I'm going to let's just say I had a near-death experience early on.
I did want to get into that. I was curious about that.
And I won't take up all of your time with that, but I just wanted to say that, that changes a lot in a person, as far as your perspective of what's scary in the world. And, even though I sort of turned my back on it for a lot of years and purposefully didn't think about it, it still had that same effect on me, because it was sort of like, I wasn't so much afraid of dying anymore. It was more like I was afraid of living, right? And so getting out there in front of people to speak, that didn't really scare me so much. But getting into a relationship with one single person terrified me. So my perspective on what was scary or anxiety producing changed quite a bit. But I do think that I still have anxiety when I get up on stage or talk to large groups of people or teach classes. It's just that it's not a stop sign for me anymore. It's like a yield sign. And I get this, it's like coming up. And I actually just posted about this yesterday, and I'll just sort of share it really quick because it was this kind of epiphany that I had in meditation. But it was that, fear is and anxiety is something that your cells of your body hold on to as a way of keeping you safe. And then your mind gives it a narrative. It says like, oh, I'm having a fear response. Maybe it's because of this. Oh, it must be because of that. And so now you've got this whole story going about what's causing it. In order to break that cycle, at least for me, and I'm starting to do this with my clients a bit here and there. I just didn't realize that I was doing it on purpose. I mean, now I see it retrospectively, but where I'm talking to the cells of their body, and I talk to the cells of my body too, and I'm like, hey, you seem to be in a state of anxiety. You seem to have some fear. What's going on? And I'll get a response. It might come in the form of like a memory or a song, or just something will pop into my head and be like, oh, that's where that came from. Okay, well, let's unpack this. Let's process this so that you can feel better. If you feel better, maybe you'll let go. You don't have to keep, trying to protect me and save me in this way. Like, thank you. But guess what? Like, this is not helpful anymore. It's actually quite harmful. Like if I do have a public speaking event situation and the cells of my body remind me of the time that I was 7 years old and I forgot the lines of the play in the second grade play that I was in, and I become mortified as I stand up there and the cells of my body collaborating with my subconscious are saying like, stop, that's not going to be very helpful. So anyway, talking with the cells of my body, allowing them to process and heal, and then it just starts to dissipate. I don't know that anxiety ever completely goes away, though, and I don't think it should, right? Because we need it to survive.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I want to unpack something you said there because I'm very curious about your perspective on this. And I know that I imagine this interview is going to flow in and out of very many. We're going to loop a lot in this interview, I'm sure of it. But that's the nature of it.
I have a very neurospicy brain, too, so I apologize in advance for that.
That's fine. This is what we love. This is what we love. Okay, so the cells, talking to the cells. Now, I'm curious about your take on this because on one level, and I in one way, I'm gonna say that part of this interview I imagine is gonna be like, okay, Kryssa, talk me into quantum journeys actually being a real thing. Like that's part of this, and that's kind of like the okay, good. I like that you're up for that challenge. And I'm sure we'll get there. But I want to start with a very simple idea, which is that the idea that you can even talk to cells.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think a lot of people, at least I've been told, and certainly more of these evidence-backed hypnosis practitioners, people that are very much, that kind of throw out the metaphysical component. They say, okay, look, it's a metaphor. You're talking to the subconscious, but what actually is that? It's really
what's the
part
subconscious?
Of your brain
That's also just a model,
Yes, right. It's a model. It's and it's, look, to me, hypnosis is the bridge between the real world and the metaphysical in a lot of ways. I'm not fully all the way there, but I definitely think there are aspects that I've seen, experienced, happen to induce in hypnotic subjects that have made me go, yeah, there's something here that is not material or has an intelligence that's beyond.
Well, let me clarify one quick thing then before you go too far down this track. Okay. Two things. One, I'm not talking to the cells of the body. I'm talking with the consciousness of the cells.
See, now this is where, so this is what I'm saying.
And the second thing is using the word metaphysical is exactly right because it's meta and it's physical. It's the meta of the physical. We live in the physical realm. So we have a difficult time interpreting anything that is beyond something that we can measure physically.
Yes.
In order to really understand that, though, we have to go meta. We have to go higher than the physical 3D world in order to really grasp what's going on. And there is a whole burgeoning field over the last 15 years, Donald Hoffman being at the forefront, called the science of consciousness. And we very much include that in Quantum Journeys Hypnosis. And so it's not me talking to the cells of the body. It's me communicating with the consciousness of those cells.
You're going
And
to love this
letting
story.
them talk. I want them to talk to me, not me talk to them. This isn't cell
Okay.
command therapy. I'm not telling them what to do. I'm inviting them into the conversation.
That's interesting. Well, I sidebar here. I wanted to say, the one time of recent that I remember that I had to debate an atheist, was on a first date. I was on a first date, very probably about like 4 months ago. Yeah, it was great. And I'm talking about this podcast, and she's a neuroscientist and all this stuff, and she's like, yeah, but how do you know? You don't. It doesn't. It's just we don't understand. Yeah, of course love is chemicals. Of course it's just chemistry. It's nothing beyond that and all this stuff. And all I had in my defense was Donald Hoffman's work. Yeah. I like pointed her right to Donald Hoffman. And
he
I must
blows
say,
the whole theory of it just being purely biology out of the water. And he takes it, he doesn't blow it out of the water. He actually, I think, very elegantly reframes it in this more metaphysical conversation. So that if somebody is
what's
coming
significant about it, would you say? Like for people that aren't familiar, I feel like you've probably
with the
explained
science
it a
of
few
consciousness.
times. In Donald Hoffman's work, like why is that important for people to grasp if they're sitting here going, no, it's just all biology or neurons? What is his contribution?
It's not an either or. It is, yes, it is biology and neurons. Biology and neurons also have consciousness. That consciousness is individuated at multiple levels. So I don't know how meta you want me to get, but let's say like the cells of your left pinky toe probably have never had a conversation with the cells of your pancreas. They can't even imagine the enormity of this being that they are both housed within, that they are both performing incredibly important jobs and functions within. They don't believe that the other exists. How could they? Yet,
yeah,
they're both housed within the same structure. And so like that, I also think of humans similarly. So each one of us is a fractal of consciousness. And this is not so much a belief. It's more like I wonder, could it be? This seems to make sense to me. And when I hear Donald Hoffman talking about these things, when I hear other people too, some are more in the paranormal realm and some are more in the science realm. But when I'm hearing these things, there's certain aspects that I'm like, this feels true. This rings true. And I tend to not be one of those people that says, I believe this, here's my firm opinion, and it's never changing. Because the moment I do that, I stop growing. So it seems to be right now in my current position in life that this makes the most sense to me, that we are all fractals of a larger consciousness having an experience in this particular body for now. And it's a temporary experience. And it's also that we can get to know ourselves better. So the self that I am right now, when I leave this particular incarnation, it's going to, I think perhaps I'm open to the possibility that I'm going to reintegrate with a larger consciousness. And maybe that consciousness is part of an even larger consciousness, which is, kind of like the turtles all the way down. Perhaps it's meta all the way up.
Yeah. Didn't you grow up in the New Age community?
Grow up is a little bit of a misnomer, but for the first 8.5, 9 years of my life, we lived in and around two different sort of spiritual New Age communities. One was in Virginia Beach, Virginia, followers and devotees of Edgar Cayce's teachings.
Wow, that was very cool.
I was only like 2, 3 years old. I don't really remember it. But then my mom and I was raised by a single parent, moved to outside Asheville, North Carolina, to the United Research Light Foundation. And I think briefly we lived actually on it, but most of the time we lived kind of around it. We had, housing outside of the actual community, but we were there all the time.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
As somebody that is You know, I mean, obviously we mentioned that you kind of get in trouble now sometimes for speaking harsh truths
Oh
about
my gosh, I got
hypnosis
in so much trouble
practices.
as a kid too. Well, I
Yeah, I
didn't
was gonna say, tell me some of the things. What did you speak up about? I
well,
want
I
to
didn't
know.
have a healthy respect for authority because I just didn't really have authority. So I didn't know I was supposed to treat it differently. I didn't know that it was a thing. And so cycling into public school in second grade, Mrs. Pendleton, if you're still out there, I still don't like you. Anyway, Mrs. Pendleton would give me just the hardest time because she would ask me a question and I would answer. Maybe also a little bit of a on the spectrum-y thing going on here. I don't know. But she would ask me a question and I would answer it as sincerely, authentically, and honestly as I could, but it would just never be the right answer. So, she would say something like, Kryssa Marie, do you want to go to the principal's office? That was my name back then, which is why I don't use that name, by the way. I hate it.
Pendleton?
No, Kristen. She
Oh,
would say, Kryssa Marie, do you want to
okay.
go to the principal's office? And I would be like, no, not at all. Why do you ask? Do you? Like, does anybody? And I would get in trouble for just like answering honestly. Or like, she would say that we can't chew gum in class, and then she would have a pack of gum on her desk. And so when she left one day, I went and grabbed the gum and tore each piece in half and gave everybody some because I was like, "That's just not fair. It's just not fair." Somehow, even though she
Wow.
wasn't there, she knew it was me. Somehow,
Did
I
you
don't
get
know.
sent to the principal's office?
I got
Office?
paddled. This was
Oh
the
my gosh.
70s. Yeah.
Holy
70s in
moly.
North Carolina. You could still paddle kids.
Uh, uh,
Yeah.
okay. So we've at least gone. Well, we've progressed since then. But I will say,
Yes, thank
I'm
goodness.
curious
Now we
what.
just bully them and harass them and belittle them. I think paddling sometimes might have been a little easier to handle in the long run.
Yes, or the
I'm not
parents
suggesting
paddle
that
the
we ever do
teachers.
that, but yeah,
Yes.
at least I
Um.
healed,
Yes, but what I'm wondering is, did you have any of that kind of that mischief towards any of the new age ideas you were surrounded with? Did you have doubts? Did you go, these people are out of their minds?
Oh,
This is
totally.
crazy.
Well, I mean, okay, when you're a teenager and a young adult, your job is to rebel, right?
Yeah.
You're supposed to rebel against whatever you were raised with. Like you have to rebel, carve your own way, cut the umbilical cord, metaphorically and all that stuff energetically. And so, yeah, I turned my back on all new age woo woo stuff. Even though I'd had quite a few metaphysical experiences myself as a kid. And even up into, elementary school, like later elementary school, I still had some interesting sort of paranormal things that had happened in my life. But by the time I was in my late teenage years, I had turned my back on the whole thing and was just like, nope, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to know anything about it. And then I had a near death experience that really rocked my world, obviously, but it also caused a lot of dissonance internally. And the only way
Mm.
for me to handle that for the longest time was to just completely ignore that it had happened. And I didn't unpack it until years later. So, but yeah, I did. I rebelled, and when I did go to college, I studied applied psychology, mostly because I wanted to understand why my own brain seemed to be so squirrely, and also probably to try and understand some of my family members. Let's be honest. But I think that's
Yes.
also why most people study psychology. I don't know. I didn't have any intention of becoming a counselor, though. So the applied psychology route is just the very science heavy, laboratory heavy, research heavy side of psychology. It's learning about learning, essentially. And,
Yeah.
neuroscience, biopsychology, all that stuff.
That's cool. I mean, there are definitely some people that stay woo-woo their whole life and they never grounded in any of that. It's just like, they're talking about Metatron and all this. I mean, I don't even know what half the words they're saying are.
Well, and a lot of it doesn't matter because we're here to experience the 3D world. Like, that's why we're here. We're not here to spend all of our time trying to figure out what's going to happen after we die or before we got here. We're here to be here. The only reason that I ended up sort of reopening that Pandora's box of woo was because in my clinical hypnotherapy sessions, suddenly I had clients that were going to past lives, parallel lives, a couple times future lives. I still can, it's hard for my 3D brain to wrap around that, but I just let the client have their experience. I don't intrude upon it or box it in with my own, beliefs or questions or skepticism. I just let them have it. I also had clients going to the Akashic Records. I had clients that were quantum jumping. I had clients that were meeting angelic guides, spirit guides, soul families, things like that. And so I had no choice but to open the door back up and kind of go like, okay, well, this is happening. Doesn't matter whether I believe in it or not. My belief has no bearing on the fact that my clients are having these experiences and I'm not at the time intentionally trying to take them there at all. We're working on, I think they're coming in to see me for weight loss. That's what they signed up for. That's what we talked about. They come in and then we discover that their issues with weight had to do with a past life experience where they starved to death. And so in this lifetime, they're hoarding food literally in their body because they have this past life sort of shadow trauma that carried through their consciousness by accident and settled into this lifetime. Or, it could be any number of reasons, but that's just one. I also had another, weight loss client who came to me, and it turned out that her issue was that she had never processed the trauma of having a late stage miscarriage. And so the cells of her body were holding on to that trauma, waiting for her to process it, not trying to punish her with the weight, but it was more just like a way of saying, like, we're still here and we still need help. And so it would never let her lose the weight. She stayed at the exact weight she was when she was 6 months pregnant, no matter what she did. Until we got in there and processed it and talked to those cells, and they told the story of the miscarriage. And it had happened years and years and years ago. And she was just blown away that came up. She didn't actually have any memory of talking about it. At the end of our session, she didn't remember. It wasn't until she heard the recording later, because I record every session, that she was like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. And it doesn't matter whether she consciously remembered it or not, because the weight started coming off.
See, now this is interesting. Do you believe then, let me get back to this, do you believe that the cells are actually holding on to something?
Absolutely.
Or is it a metaphor, or does it not matter?
I don't think it matters. Maybe it's a metaphor, and there's no way to quantify it. We can't measure that. But what we can do is look at the empirical evidence of the results. And the results are that in this particular woman's case, and in several other cases, I can go on and on with client case studies, but she started to just shed the weight. She didn't change anything about her diet, about her activity levels, nothing. It just started shedding as we started to process that trauma. And the cells of her body no longer needed to hold on to it. It was almost like they were a repository for the trauma, waiting until she had the tools and resources. And I was one of those resources, waiting until she had the tools and resources to help her. And then as soon as we were able to figure out what was going on at a deeper subconscious level, right, then the cells of her body were able to release that trauma and recharge. And then she no longer needed to do that. And she didn't even know that that's what was happening. Because she had no memory of the session. She thought that I had just done some sort of traditional hypnosis, and she didn't really remember it, but I had, said, or, people sort of often have this misperception that hypnotists like wave magic wands and say some special words, and then bam, suddenly you're a completely different person. So she probably had something like that going on until she actually listened to the recording later. And then she was like, oh, that's what it was. She was really surprised. And it was months later when she contacted me and reached out and said, I finally listened to the recording, and that just blew me away. I had no memory of that at all. So it didn't matter that she didn't know consciously. It had no bearing on anything, because she started to get the results.
Would you put that against another? I mean, I'm just curious. Look, it's very hard to. I know. I'm very much intrigued by the process of finding empirical truths in art form, which to me, which is very hard to do. Because I mean, I never try any of that Stanford crap. None of the studies there. And anytime somebody recently was like, I looked up NLP and it's called pseudoscience on the web, I'm going, oh my God, because it's not a science. It's a communication. It's or when it's practiced at its best, you can't do the same thing in a repeatable way, because every person's giving you it's a feedback loop. So That's so it's like, okay, you could run, the phobia cure with 1,500 people,
Right.
but I don't trust the practitioner running it 1,500 times, because a
Well, and
skilled
also
practitioner is going
each
to
one of those people
respond.
is bringing their own unique
Exactly.
experience and background and perspective to, like, I don't think that cookie cutter hypnosis is it's we're moving away from that. I don't think it's the I have to be careful about how I say this, but I don't think that it's the most effective form of hypnotherapy out there.
Yes, let's hear it. Let's let's throw some hypnotists out right now. No, what do you mean? Go.
I'm not naming names, but no. But I mean, I feel like there's a place and a time for stuff like that, because sometimes you don't have literally the time to get to know somebody well enough to help them at that, very individual, unique level. Like if you're sitting next to somebody and you're about to board an airplane and they're having a terrible phobia of flying, I think the cookie cutter, quick phobia cures, hypnotic phobia cures is totally the way to go. It might not last forever, but it will last for that flight. If you want to help that same person to release that phobia entirely, you might need to actually do more personalized work, because that is a unique person with a unique set of triggers and responses and perceptions and a unique ISE, the initial sensitizing event. And every time that they've been re-triggered since then is going to be part of their unique journey and path. And also, how has it settled into the neural pathways of their mind? It's going to be different for somebody who is faced with the prospect of flying weekly than it is for somebody who's faced with the prospect of flying once every 10 years. So you can't use the same approach if you actually want to get to the root of the issue. Now, I'm not saying we necessarily need to regress to that root. I think that's a can of worms. Sometimes it's helpful. Sometimes it's super high risk because it can re-traumatize. I learned that the hard way. I
Interesting.
accidentally re-traumatized one of my clients because I was using a regression to cause form of hypnotherapy. And I later realized that I myself had been re-traumatized. And I didn't even realize it at the time. I just thought that there was something horribly broken with me all of a sudden. Why can't I work like I usually do? What's wrong with me? Where's my motivation? I totally understand what happened now, but I had to get to the other side of it. But so the type of hypnosis that I do, Quantum Journeys Hypnosis, and I'm not going to go on and on. I'll just give you like a quick little taster. Let's say we have that person who has the phobia of flying.
Yeah.
So the first thing we do is my induction. It's a little bit longer than most. It's still technically rapid, but it's going to be about 5 to 7 minutes. But that's because we bring in energy work and working with light. So it's not just an induction. The induction itself is very cathartic and healing. And the energy work isn't coming from the practitioner. I'm not laying hands on and doing Reiki or something. We're having the client themselves open up their energy centers and bring that energy through their body and feel it. They'll feel it. Just ask them, where do you feel it now? And what direction is it going in? And NLP kind of does some of this, but they won't admit it. Anyway.
Yes.
But there is
That's
energy
fair.
work in NLP too. And so once we get them into this beautiful sort of like theta brainwave state where they're just very, very relaxed and they're open to the experience, then we take that analytical part of their mind, otherwise known as like the critical faculty for colleagues out there, the analytical part of their conscious waking mind. And we have that just step to the side and take a little vacation, take a little nap. And the rest of the consciousness meets us in what I call the hallway of answers. And then at that point, I ask for that client's higher consciousness to just reveal whatever door we need to go through to help with whatever the issue is. Each person has their own hallway. Each person has their own doors. Each person has their own resources. And so I'm not healing them. I'm just getting them into connection with the resources within themselves, within their consciousness or their body that has the ability to heal them. I don't know what's going to be on the other side of that door. They don't know either. Now, there's some doors where it's pretty obvious what's going on, and that's what I teach in Quantum Journeys Hypnosis. There's like 5, 6 doors that it's most of the time you're going to end up in one of these 5 or 6 places. But sometimes we end up in places that you wouldn't expect at all. And I go,
This is That's interesting. I'm curious, is this just what you discovered after all these people go in the past lives, people go in the future, all these things you were talking about? Is this you know, I don't know,
Yes
the
and
Kryssa
no.
Bowman technique? Yeah, how did it all come together? Like where did Quantum Journeys come from? Curious about the
Yeah,
origin here.
good question.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Okay. Is this like the answers inside of me and
Hmm.
I'm gonna share it with you?
Well, I started coming up with these things while I was actually in sessions, and my own higher consciousness would come through and start leading the session. And I would just be watching and
What?
going, how did I know to say that? How did I know to do that? Where did that come from? And what was interesting is that it was getting direct voice from these clients, direct voice of whatever, the cells of their body, a cancerous tumor, a subpersonality, a past life personality, a spirit guide, whatever. It was getting direct voice from these. But what was also happening was I was giving direct voice from my higher consciousness. And the cool thing is it dropped all pretense. So when you're dealing with more traditional hypnosis, there's a lot, and NLP, there's a lot of like flowery language and little, trickstery things that you can throw in there to make the subconscious kind of, it's almost manipulative, but for a good purpose, right? Okay.
Yeah.
When you're talking directly to the higher consciousness, you can just be straight up and say, why are we here? You don't have to be like, and in a moment, but not quite yet, perhaps in the future, you will discover that, like, none of that is even necessary at all. You could just say, why
Hmm.
are we here? What's happening? What's going on? It's all about the questions. And then the client themselves has the answers. It's just all about asking the right questions.
That's interesting. It almost reminds me a little bit of subliminal therapy. A little bit. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? The whole like talking to the or like that high level parts work, but it's
Yeah.
cutting right to the quick.
Yeah.
Um,
And Roy
you know,
Hunter and
it
I have had a conversation about that in email recently, where there is a lot of that sort of overlap with the spiritual hypnosis parts therapy that he teaches, and some of what I'm doing in Quantum Journeys. But it wasn't because of that. It's just that we both stumbled upon sort of the same thing, you know.
yeah.
And when these things started happening in my sessions, I was like, well, this isn't a style of hypnotherapy that I have been trained in. And so I better do something about that. Like, in order to be the responsible hypnotherapist that I need to be for my clients, rather than denying their experiences and saying, well, you can't possibly be having past life memories, because I don't believe in that. I was like, they're having these, and I need to hold a safe space for them to have them, because the end result is that they're getting better. They're feeling better. They're processing this stuff. They're moving out of a state of, triggers and traumas, and into a state of, having just more internal resources. And so I'm not going to deny that just because I don't know what's going on. So I started reading up on it. I started studying it. I started taking different courses, different classes, and it all started clicking together. And then I myself had a past life regression. I've actually had a few since then, but I had one where I realized I've done this exact same work several times in several lifetimes.
Was that with a practitioner or did you just
Mm-hmm.
spontaneously? Oh, okay,
And
okay. I
also
was gonna.
spontaneously as well. I did have a practitioner, and also some of it was spontaneous because I meditate daily, which is a form of self hypnosis for me. It is, because I
And
basically,
you
when I
go into
meditate, I
past
just
lives and
ask.
meditation, like you go
Sometimes
in.
I just ask to go
Oh,
wherever I need to go for like the next leg of my journey, like what's going to be in my highest good, and then I get that. And sometimes it's very, very personal stuff that's just unique to me, and then sometimes it's like bigger stuff that I'm supposed to share with like the students, and on a bigger stage. So I've had a few past life memories where I was, for all intents and purposes, a hypnotist. That wasn't called that, but that's what I was doing. I was putting people into a trance state to help them through, in one lifetime, to help them through this 3-day long sort of vision quest journey. And so I put them into a trance state in order to be able to open up those portals of consciousness, and to have their body not be so uncomfortable while they were going through this.
What in the world? Do you
So
think
some of it came from that, because I was like, oh, well, so what happened, Greg? Um, the reason why I even went to that particular past life is because there was some trauma there that I had accidentally carried to this life in the form of like a shadow trauma that went with my consciousness. And here's how I think it happens: when you incarnate again, it sort of settles back into the new cells.
hmm,
And the trauma that I had, and I think this is true of a lot of people that are in the healing arts, it's persecution trauma, because I had been killed for doing this kind of work. And so I was like, well, let's go back and, just release those traumas, those pains, so that I can do this work now without quite so much anxiety and fear. While I was there, and I started to see like, oh, I've been doing this for a while. This is pretty cool. I think I know a lot more in that lifetime than I know now. Can I just bring that wisdom forth? Like, there's got to be more to past life regression than just releasing trauma. Can't we also pick up the wisdom? Like, why reinvent the wheel over and over again? If I had that information and knowledge then, can I just bring it forth now and let it integrate with my current knowledge and information and see what happens? And I got this, my higher self essentially laughed. Her name is Elle. She was like, you cracked the code.
yeah.
I was like, hell yeah. All right, let's do it. And it was almost immediately after that Quantum Journeys Hypnosis became a thing.
This is interesting. It's also making me, you've also finally shed light on why Hypnothoughts Live, which is this big conference for people that don't know for hypnotists, needs to happen in Vegas, because we are the persecuted ones. That is the town for the Sodom and Gomorrah of society.
I never thought
you can have a
that way.
hypnosis convention, and you can have adult film conventions in the same place, and we're all
Yes,
we're all the
that's
same.
true.
And if Hypnothoughts did a mashup with that convention one day, that would be very strange. But yes, no, but
I bet
I'd
the
be curious.
costumes would be extraordinary, though.
That would be fascinating to do past life regressions for that kind of thing.
I think we should have a party. Come as a previous personality.
Yes.
Come as your past life self.
But this is, I mean, and also just thinking about Vegas in general, like magic shows, stage hypnosis has always been, oh, I'll be a Vegas stage hypnotist. I wonder if there is something about the way those arts are connected, or there's a taboo about kind of exploring things in this way, and that town is the town of sin. I don't know, something to think about.
I do know that I can't I can't be there for very long. No matter how great my sort of energetic protection is, Vegas is intense for me. I pick up just so much all the time. When I'm at Hypnothoughts, I spend most of my time in my room. I don't really get out and like socialize much, or do things. I'll go to classes and then my own presentation.
You'll
stay in my room the rest of the time. And just walking through like the casino part, there's just so much the sense of desperation and honestly, and I'm just going to say it, Greg, because it's going to come out of the bag anyway. I sense entities, like when there's attachments to people. They could just be lost souls that are a little bit, they don't necessarily want to be stuck here in this pseudo 3D realm that they're in, but they don't really know where to go. And then other ones are a little darker, and they love people with addictions. Love people with addictions and desperation, and need and scarcity and want and all that stuff. And so it's very difficult for me to like spend a lot of time in Vegas because of that. And it's a wonderful place, and people that can live there and thrive there, like hats off to you. Like there's no judgment here whatsoever. It's more that like my own energy body can't handle it. I have to be in a more rural area.
There's something about a grandmother at a slot machine that just or someone that age. Maybe she's not even a grandmother.
Unless she's having a great time, in which case, again, more power to you. But
it's that trance. It's the trance of desperation, you say.
Yeah.
as they just keep pulling. It's like, oh my gosh.
And
But
gambling
you know
in
what?
itself is
We're
just,
all in that trance now. We're doing the same thing. We're pulling our screens down, and it's the same. We're trying to get the stimulation too.
get
So
those little
yes,
dopamine hits going,
there's a lot of healing, Kryssa. There's a lot of societal healing you need to do. I mean, and we all need to do. Though I'm starting to see a little bit
We're
more
getting
of
there.
that. Every single time that I think I'm experiencing something that's like very niche, like adults in my 30s feel like you're sometimes wasting days on social media. I'll see like the ad for the coach that's the niche.
Right.
So it's interesting. It's like that the pain is there, and then somebody knows. Now I don't know if that coach is successful, but at the same time, I mean, it's it's interesting that well, look, I think hypnosis could cure all, really, if
I think
people
it
gave it
can.
that thought.
I think that it might fall short of regrowing limbs, but other than that, I think it can. I don't know about cure. I wouldn't say cure just for legal purposes, but I think that it can resolve just about anything. And I think it can really accelerate things too. Before you opened mic, you had asked me like, how did I kind of accelerate to having this academy so quickly? And it's true hypnosis.
Let's really look at this. Like, you were a clinical hypnotherapist for.
Well, I was actually.
What were you doing before?
I was a chef.
Oh my gosh, I keep talking to coaches that were former chefs, and okay, this is crazy, but interesting. It does kind of lend itself well to the next thing.
You have to be resourceful and creative and come up with, what are you going to do when you have just this many ingredients and you have to make something that's going to be absolutely, fantastic. And I think that there's a lot of crossover. But I think almost any experience can have that sort of crossover with hypnosis, hypnotherapy. Well, so I put myself through college as a chef. So I've been dabbling in the world of psychology for a long time, since actually 1998, I think. And then, I didn't actually formally get into hypnosis until 2019. And it was directly because it helped me. Remember I said that I had struggled with agoraphobia? Yeah. Well, years and years and years of talk-based therapy and even EMDR wasn't really moving it that much. And then I had 3 sessions, hypnosis sessions, and bam, finally I was able to like participate in life again. And I went, wow. Oh my gosh, I have to be able to do this. I need to be able to help other people, pay it forward. But also, like, the thing with agoraphobics is that if they can't leave their house, they can't go get therapy. And this was before Zoom was such a big thing, right? So, I mean, I think Skype was around maybe since 2013, 2010 at the earliest. I don't know, something like that. And I had done a couple of Skype sessions, but I was really fortunate. And then I found a cognitive behavioral therapist who was willing to come to my house and at least get me to the point where I could leave my house to come to her. So there was a little bit of movement in my recovery from agoraphobia, but I still had all of these negotiations in place. So I could leave as long as I was less than 2 miles away, or if I had a second person with me, or if I wouldn't be gone for more than 2 hours, or blah, 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 all these different things. But nothing really actually released it until hypnosis. And it took 3 sessions. And then I was and that accelerated things for me so much. So then I started using hypnosis on myself for all sorts of stuff. I started studying it. I think I've got 6 different certifications in different types of hypnosis and hypnotherapy and NLP. But I started using it on myself. I also had this lifelong bleeding disorder, which is kind of gross, I know, but that's what it is. It was a factor 7 deficiency, and I had an upcoming surgery, and I didn't want to take the thing that they give you to clot your blood on purpose. Because I was in my late 40s, and now we have to watch out for other issues, which is okay, well, we're clotting your blood on purpose, which could cause thrombosis or a stroke or an embolism and all these things. So I was I'm going to just use hypnosis on this and see if I can get my blood work into their normal ranges, so I don't have to have it's called DDAVP. It's awful stuff. Anyway, life-saving, but the side effects are awful. And so I did for like 2.5 weeks. I made a recording for myself, talking to the cells of my body. And this was before I learned how to communicate with the consciousness of the cells. This was me just like talking at them, right? But they listened. They were like, yeah, okay, we can do this. I had a whole blood assay done and everything was within the normal ranges for the first time in my whole life, except for my platelets were a little wonky, but everything else was in the range of normal. And I was able to have the surgery without having to be administered this god awful stuff. So then I was like, wow, okay, so it's helped with agoraphobia. It's helped with this lifelong bleeding disorder. Like, what can't it do? And I just kept going.
Let me ask you one thing, Kryssa, because I want to help myself as well as others out there that are going, I've tried this stuff. I close my eyes. I don't see things. Like, what's going? Do you think you are? I mean, I wonder if it's because you're spiritually prone or more intuitive or empathic, that you're able to, that it works better
I think
for
it's
you.
just
I mean,
because
what
I
would you say?
have more curiosity and less self-doubt. Like instead of
Interesting. So,
immediately shutting myself down and going, well, I don't think this could possibly be real. I just had a lot of I was approaching it the same way that I would approach laboratory research in college. Like instead of trying to assume the outcome, I would just be like, I wonder what's going to happen. I wonder if
yeah,
this will work. And so my version of skepticism isn't just shutting things down. I feel like that's just as narrow-minded as believing in everything without any empirical evidence, right?
totally.
So for me, if I am doing these things to myself, instead of me going like, I think I'm getting better, but maybe that's not real. Maybe I'm just making that up. I just don't make a judgment about it at all. And I just say, let's just see what happens. So I think what happens is a lot of people were unfortunately brainwashed to not daydream, first of all, to not imagine things, second of all, and to draw this huge distinction between reality and imagination as if they're really two different things. And I'm sorry, but they're not. Anybody who's ever suffered with anxiety knows that that anxiety is 100% in their imagination. It's never happening right now. I should say never, but very rarely happening right now. It's something that you think might happen, catastrophizing, or maybe you're ruminating about something that did happen. So still in the imagination, because you're only remembering the negative, scary parts. You're not remembering the whole
Yeah.
picture, right? So for me, it's not so much about like, oh, I have special superpowers. No, I just don't automatically assume that it's wrong or that it's untrue or like I just don't put a judgment on it. I just say I wonder what's going to happen. And I approach my client sessions the same way.
Do you think you've inspired others to be able to have that mindset approach and they've all of a sudden noticed results?
Yes. And I don't want to shoot my
Oh,
own horn because this is about the process. It's not about like Kryssa has some whatever gift. But yes, as soon as I am able to get through somebody's like stubbornness of like, I need proof. And I go, maybe you'll get it, maybe you won't. But what's the worst thing that can happen if you just keep looking for the evidence? And then they start to get it. And I go, and what's the worst that can happen if you stop denying the evidence that you're seeing? What if you just go ahead and go, maybe this is really happening? You know, and everybody's so worried about, well, what if I'm crazy and people harass me? And I'm like, well, just, I don't know, keep it to yourself. Talk to me about it if you want. I've got a Facebook group you can come in where we talk about this stuff. You'll be safe, you know? Um,
yes.
so it's really just about like not immediately shutting yourself down. And I've had people come to me who had like extraordinary like psychic gifts as a kid, and then they shut them down very much on purpose because they were harassed or they were bullied or, you know, they were invalidated. And then later they find me and they're like, I think I would really like to have those back. And we go in and it turns out that they've had them all along, but they just turned the like faucet like all the way just down. So it's just a tiny trickle. And so what I do is I install a mechanism so that they can turn it up or down at will, because sometimes maybe it truly isn't safe to have it at full blast. And also, would you like, if you're on the casino floor in Vegas, do you want to have it on full blast and picking up everything? I don't think so, right? So maybe that's a good time to turn it all the way down. And then other times, maybe it is good to have that ability to turn it back up. But my feeling is that, and again, this could change because I don't like to say like, I believe blank, blank, blank. My feeling is that right now, we actually all have these extrasensory gifts, but we've been conditioned to not believe that we have them. And that's the cool thing about human 3D existence. Whatever we believe is going to be our reality.
Mm.
And that goes back to that
Yes.
science of consciousness. So if we believe in
And
limitation, we will live a very limiting life.
well, then, okay, so then let's take it back to you're able to get you start hypnotizing yourself. You're noticing results. I mean, how is this affecting your belief? Are you starting to get to a place where you're going, I wonder what I can manifest here now that I know I
Yeah.
can. Yeah, how does it start
So
shifting
you want
for
to talk
you?
about the intersection of neuroscience, quantum theory, and law of attraction, and how that all fits in with the science of consciousness? Because I know we don't have much time, but I'm happy to give like
Oh
my
my
little.
gosh. I mean, look, how much time do you have? Can you do like another
I
20
can
minutes?
wrap this up in minutes. Actually, I feel like I've come
Because
up with an
I can.
explanation that works. I think. Anyway.
Okay.
Okay. So first of all, let's agree, at least for the purpose of this conversation, that there is such an intersection.
Okay.
Okay. All right. And so the law of attraction, which states that our thoughts, feelings, and beliefs have the power to shape the world around us because it's shaping internally what we're perceiving, right? So the law of attraction is like, if you believe that you can have this, then it will come. Most people misunderstand it to be that simple. It's actually not that simple, and I'm going to break it down in a minute. But it's you know, I feel almost bad that like my manifesting colleagues have inadvertently given this very shallow explanation of the law of attraction that is just like, if you think really hard on it and if you really believe it's possible, then it will find you, right? And that was even my initial understanding. And it's not exactly wrong, but it's not the whole story. So,
Marshall Silver, of all people, I think he got into a famous lawsuit and got out of it because he didn't make people a billionaire in a month. But the court judge, this is what I've heard, ruled that, well, it did say in the contract you need to be praying hard enough.
oh
And
my
they weren't
gosh.
praying
And
hard
that's
enough.
so subjective, right?
So, I mean, this is stuff out there. I think people think they're just not praying hard enough for success. But sorry, go back to what you were saying.
Yeah. That also reminds me of like the hypnotherapists who are coming from a place of pure ego. And then when their clients don't get the results that they came in for, the hypnotherapist blames the client. Oh, well, you didn't do this enough. You didn't listen to the recording long enough. You didn't, whatever, right? So
it's the gaslighting in the industry that is rampant.
there's a really simple solution to all that. Just get your ego out of there. And heal it. Like heal your freaking ego. We all have wounded ego parts that benefit from healing. But when it comes to doing hypno sessions, just get it out of there. It has no place being in your sessions because
that is what I think is interesting about you. I see your face everywhere and all these things, and every single time I'm like, my first reaction is like, oh, is Kryssa trying to be one of these hypnosis guru leaders? And then I start watching your videos and I see I'm like, I look at all your offerings and I go, no, there really is sincerity here. I really think you're just doing something that people are latching onto. That's very genuine.
I'm also like notorious for totally sabotaging people's perceptions of me if they try to make me into a guru. I will knock myself off that pedestal faster than they can.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's a pretty cool quality.
I don't want to be anybody's guru. And also, whenever I have like a download or something that I'm sharing with people, I want to make sure that I always just say, like, take what resonates and leave the rest. Like, it doesn't have to be, I'm telling you this, that, the other. There's 8 billion of us on this planet. There's not going to be a one size fits all, ever. But what I was going to get back to with the law of attraction is that it has like virtually nothing to do with what you want. It has to do.
Go into that.
Yeah. It has to do with how you feel or your emotional frequency. So calibrating your emotional frequency, if we're having a lot of feelings of jealousy, envy, self-doubt, self-criticism, shame, guilt, all those are really dense, lower emotional frequencies. And wherever we're at, we're going to be attracting. So the law of attraction isn't a thing that you just like go and do. It's not like a switch. It's always happening. So if we're down here, that's what we're attracting more of. And it's not a punishment. It's basically a mirror. It's a reflection of what's going on internally. We're going to see that externally. In order to switch out of that, that's where the reticular activating system comes in. We need to intentionally start looking for things that are at a higher frequency. So let's say that your reticular activating system, like you wake up in the morning and the first thing you do is like look at your phone, and then there's some little fire you have to put out or some little obligation that you forgot about or whatever. That immediately sets the tone for your whole morning of like, God dang it, I totally forgot about this thing. I better get up and do it. Right now your energy's like frenetic and kind of pissed off. And now because of that, you're going to notice all the other little complications. Whereas if you had woken up, not looked at your phone right away, maybe gone out and watched the sunrise and just sort of allowed yourself to feel at awe with the world and the beauty and, you know, just creation, then you're going to be noticing all the glimmers. You're going to be going through your life and it's like those little complications are still there. They don't go away, but they don't hit you the same. You're kind of like, oh yeah, there's that thing I got to do. That's okay. It's fine. I'll just take care of that because it's a great day. And you know, why not? So raising your emotional frequency is really a matter of reticular activating system meeting confirmation bias, because whatever it is that we are expecting to see in the world, we're going to find. If we know that that's the code, then we can crack the code by intentionally looking to confirm something different outside of that. And it can start really simple because it can be really hard to reframe an entire, you know, mindset. You can start simple. You can just be like, okay, today I want to tune into the sound of the laughter of babies. Something just really simple. And then as you go throughout your day, you're grocery shopping or you're at the gym or you're watching a movie or whatever, every time the laughter of babies makes it into your awareness, it'll cause you to smile and be like, ah, I noticed that. Now you have a piece of like that puzzle to control for changing what you notice in the world, because all those things live side by side. You have all the crappy things that don't feel good right next to all the really wonderful things that feel good. So you've got all the triggers and all the glimmers. Which one are you going to pay attention to? If you pay attention to this and you get confirmation of those glimmers happening, you're going to raise your emotional vibration. That's where the neuroscience comes in, right? Now you're actively creating neural pathways that are looking for more opportunities in the world. If you have a ton of opportunities coming in, but you're way over here looking at what's wrong, you're not even going to notice them. So how in the world are you supposed to make choices and take inspired action that move you into them? You can't, because you don't even know they're there, because you're over here focusing on the fact that somebody said something nasty to you or cut you off in traffic or you like whatever, right? But if you're intentionally looking for the positives and the glimmers, then you'll be able to take the inspired action when those opportunities come about. That's the law of attraction.
What?
You can also like have the law of repulsion, which is when those negative opportunities come up and it's fear-based, say no. Just say no. Say no to fear-based action and yes to inspired action.
See, now this, okay, I want to go into this even more because I definitely, I did a whole week, I think it was 2 years ago, about manifestation. I had every single day, I had a different manifestation person on, just trying to delve into it. And my conclusion at the end of that week was that it seems like all of this is a trance state. It's a the law of attraction to me.
Life is a trance state.
Well, it is, but there's a law of attraction trance, which is focusing turn to its reticular activate. I mean, I use that language too. I said it's reticular activation. I think these people are all of a sudden like just tuning into, like you said, opportunity rather than this other focus that they had. Therefore, you could, again, connect it to psychology, hypnotic principles, and whatnot. But what you're saying is interesting, which is that you're tuning into a higher level of consciousness in the reticular activation system. So,
well, the reticular activation system is like the control, the volume. That's all that is.
Right.
Just turns it up so that you can like tune into a different frequency, just like a radio station. And now you notice all those other things that you weren't noticing before. They were right there, but you couldn't feel them or sense them or see them because you were looking over here. You were looking at.
So let me ask you this then. For yourself, What is the like? Okay, because someone could go, well, I want to become a coach and I want to be a hypnotist and I want to teach classes and I want to have an online school. And to me, it's like you could tune into opportunities for that. But what is the higher consciousness version of looking for opportunities that may lead
I
to the
don't think you
result that you're
focus
at
them.
now?
I'm going to turn this whole thing on its ear, Greg, and say that it's not about focusing on them. It's not even about looking for them. It's about noticing
Mm,
where you're at and having appreciation and gratitude for everything that's happening right here, right now. Noticing those things. That's what brings those opportunities. I didn't set out to have a hypnosis academy. That wasn't even on my radar at all.
that's
And
what I intuited. I didn't think you did.
yeah. And when I taught the first class, I was like, I entered into a contract of sorts with my higher self. When I started having open communication with like an aspect of my higher consciousness, it's not the highest, and there's different levels and layers because there's one that's so high that doesn't even care about my little human existence. It's like, whatever, I'm not going to give you career advice. It doesn't matter. Oh, you're in pain? Yay. That's more food for me. Um, oh, you're happy? Also more food for me. Like there's an aspect of my higher consciousness that is just kind of like, yeah, just do whatever. It doesn't matter. Like when you come back, we'll talk about it. But then there's the one that's kind of closer to the 3D world that does care, right? And so when I started having the conversations with that's the one I call L. She said, hey, just give me 1 year of your life and do everything that I suggest that you do. I'm going to bring it into your awareness and I'm going to say, like, here's an opportunity. Let's do this. I'm going to give you inspiration to like take certain actions. And then I'm going to make sure that I follow that up with some sort of like coincidence or sign that, like, yep, this is the thing I was supposed to do. I was like, oh, okay. Why not? What do I have to lose? Because at that point, I really didn't. I was
Yeah.
kind of depressed, honestly. And I was empty nesting and I didn't, my kids were all grown and I was just like, fine, let's do it. It was not comfortable. It was, in fact, very uncomfortable at times, but it was inspiring. I lost some people in my life that just were like, Kryssa, you're crazy. And I was like, maybe. Well, I'll leave margin for that. But I'm not going to put a judgment on it. I'm just going to say, let's wait and see what happens, So I started doing it. And one of the things that she said is, I'm going to give you some information and we're going to pull it from other lifetimes. We're going to pull it from higher consciousness. We're going to, add to it connection points, data points from your sessions and also other hypnotists. And we're going to put it together into something that you can teach other people. And I was like, oh, okay, I can do that. It was just one class. I can do that. So I did. It sold out and I did. It was a 2-hour class. And at the end of it, people seemed to really like it. And I was like, okay, that's done. Okay, now we can just get back to like living life, right? And then pretty soon there was a second class that needed to come about. And I was like, oh, yeah, because I have to teach them like, well, now that they've learned this, what happens if their clients start doing that? Okay.
Mm.
So then there was a second class and then a third and then a fourth. And then there were 6 total. And I was like, this is out of hand. I can't keep doing this. And I don't know whose idea it was, if it was mine, my higher self, or like somebody that I was talking to, but somehow the concept of turning it into taking those 6 core classes and making it into a course came about. And I was like, well, that would certainly make sense. So I hired somebody to help with editing the videos and making them just more consumable, because I have a tendency to ramble, as you can see. And we needed to take out some of that stuff. And then we started marketing it as a course. And then the idea of making it a certifying course came about, which meant that I had to add a lot more as far as the history of hypnosis. And now I had to go into like more traditional hypnotic methods and NLP, and things that caused me to have to like up level my skills significantly in order to be able to teach that. Right. So that's where we ended up with all of
Interesting.
that. Yeah. So
So
it
it's a
wasn't like I ever
dance.
said like, oh, I think I want to do this now. It was never a goal and then reaching the goal for me. Now, I'm not saying
Could
that
you
I
put into
would
words what, or could you put into like for somebody that is going, okay, yeah, but she said you're like tuning into a higher consciousness. Were
it was
you look
almost
at
like
what were the
dares. It was
glimmers?
like truth or dare almost. Like my
Oh,
higher self
okay.
was like, hey, so here's a thing you can do. I highly suggest it. You can do it the easy way, which is just do it. Or you can do it the hard way, which is we're going to start making limitations in your life that sort of like wrangle you into doing the thing. You're not going to have
Mm.
options out. So I was like, oh, and I did actually say no a few times to things, not in that first year. But after that, there was like something very specific that I was like, no. My higher self kept saying yes. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I don't have the energy for that. That sounds really uncomfortable. And then she has a very dry sense of humor. And she's like, it's called a comfort zone for a reason, Kryssa. You're not supposed to live there though. Okay. It's time to grow.
Yes.
And I was like, mm. So I kept saying no. And then that's exactly what happened. Things started getting more and more limiting until I had no choice but to do the thing that she kept saying I should do anyway. So I finally did. So I learned the hard way, like, go ahead and just listen.
Now,
and the
look,
big thing was,
hear all.
Oh, go ahead. What?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Well, I was going to say, I hear all this, but I'm curious where the attraction piece comes into it. Like, is there any awareness of what you're attracting in all this throughout this either? Or is it just because I guess I'm trying to connect the two. I can't see the difference between like surrendering to a higher, Michael Singer talks about it, this idea of like, the surrender experiment. You're just surrendering to what life is guiding you towards. So what's the difference between,
and I think it's different for everybody. So like some people are hardwired to be goal driven and they need that. That's what helps them calibrate their path. That's great. I think they should absolutely do that. That's not how I work. What's most effective for me is to just wake up every day and intentionally have gratitude and appreciation and look for joy.
Yes.
And then from doing that, opportunities just kind of come my way. And because I'm in that state, I'm able to recognize them and take action.
You know what? Tell me how to do that, but not get caught up in distraction. Because I feel like that's my issue.
Well, I mean, distraction's always going to happen, I mean, we're human. I'm not saying that I'm constantly in a state of joy. Hell no. I get frustrated. I even get angry. Yeah, I mean, we're here to experience all of it, right?
But I guess what I'm saying is, could people, because to me, like, picking up books all day, I mean, I think sometimes I could just read all day. Now, that doesn't mean I probably would get bored after a while. I know I have, because it is a fantasy versus the reality of it.
Well, maybe you're one of those people that is meant to distill information, I think there's all different kinds of people, but if you're the sort of person who is, your joy comes from finding knowledge and resources and distilling them, then do that. If that's what brings you joy, do that.
I just don't know what the end goal would be. Or do I need to know?
I don't know. That's up to you. Do you need that? I don't need that. I just trust that it's going to all be fine. But then again, I've died a couple times. So I don't really have that fear of death hanging over my head. The only fear I have is not doing enough with the life that I have this time, because I don't want to start all over.
I fear that too. I fear that too.
Yeah. So this is the way that I allow myself to just sort of be guided as I go is through that. I call it inspired action. Now, not everybody is wired that way. That's how I'm wired. And it might be that there's different, levels to it too. Like this might be just where I'm at now. And then like, a couple of years from now, it might be somewhere else entirely. I don't have a specific goal right now. My goal is what is it? FAFO?
What it freaking
fudge around and find out.
Yes.
That's my goal. My goal is to just just be open to the opportunities, be open to the things that come my way, feel them out. Sometimes I'll get opportunities and I'll feel it and I'll be like, that doesn't feel in alignment with me. Like I'll be like, could be a really good opportunity, but something feels a little off about it. And I don't mean off in the sense of anxiety, like, oh, I'm afraid to do that. More just like something doesn't sit right. And so I'll muscle test myself a lot to find out and be like, I recently had a decision that I had to make that was not coming easily. Normally I can make decisions pretty quickly. This one decision was like, it was just evading me. And I could not figure out for the life of me. And I would do the muscle testing and it kept coming up like, inconclusive. I even pulled out a pendulum, again, inconclusive. I reached out to friends. Half of them said, do it. Half of them said, don't do it. I was like, and I didn't have any major fears about it. So it wasn't like I could tap in to see, like, is this, me making a decision out of fear or intuition? It was more just like my intuition was sort of saying, like, you could go either way, Kryssa. They're equal. And I was like, well, that's not helpful. But it basically said, you've reached a point in your life where you're going to get whatever you need, regardless of which direction you take right now. Like either of those choices, you're still going to be on your path. And I was like, oh, okay, well, then I guess I just have to kind of flip a coin and decide. And that's not how I did it. Something else happened was I don't know, we're already pretty woo, so I'll just say it.
No, go deep, go weirder.
Okay. All right. So
how weird can we go here?
I started asking for signs. Now, this is a funny thing about the reticular activating system and confirmation bias and the law of attraction. When you're playing with it and you start noticing things, if you ask for signs, you have to be really clear that you're looking for a sign that's specifically for a thing, not just looking for a sign. And what I mean by that was I asked for a sign. Actually, I asked for two. I was like, okay, if I'm supposed to do it, give me the sign. If I'm not supposed to do it, give me the sign. I saw both in the same hour. And I was like, again with the thing, So sometimes people will be like, I keep seeing yellow roses everywhere. That must be a sign. And I'm like, if it's a sign for you, then it is. Like, I don't want to take that away from you. But what I've noticed in my life is if I say, show me blue butterflies so that I know I'm on the right path, blue butterflies will just be in my life all over the place. But then if I say, show me something to show me if I need to get on a different path, then I'll see that too. And so this time when I said, show me this for this and that for that, I kept seeing both. So that, to me, that's not law of attraction. That's just manifesting, purely just I'm manifesting both. I was looking for castles or yellow roses. That's why the yellow rose came up. The castle was supposed to be, yes, I'm going to do it because it had to do with getting an office on Castle Street. And then the yellow roses had to do with not doing it because I have a yellow rose bush here, but it's not in bloom currently because it's winter. And my home office. So yellow rose for my home office. So anyway, within the same hour, I saw White Castle cheeseburgers. Suddenly my son out of nowhere was like, hey, what are these? Let's buy these. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, we don't eat that crap. But then I was like, wait, that's a castle. Never seen that line, and it's Valentine's Day, of course. There's roses everywhere. Right at the very end of the checkout line was a single yellow rose standing amongst all the red and pink. And I was just like, all right, thanks, reticular activating system and law of attraction. You're still no help in this situation. But so what happened was I said, okay, instead of me asking for signs, let's put it in the hands of the one other person that has something to do with this decision. And it was the person who I would have been renting the office from. I was like, I need to hear from this person within 24 hours to get a yes or a no. And what happened was she reached out and said, hey, if it doesn't work out for you to take this office, that's okay. I'm realizing I could really use the extra space for blank, blank, blank. And I was like, there's my sign. Thank you.
Yeah.
That one I can recognize. So I decided not to take that office. So anyway, the law of attraction, like I said, it's always at work. I fully believe that. Like whatever we're experiencing at the level of emotional frequency and mindset and perception is what we're going to find. And it's not a big woo-woo thing. It's because that's what we're inadvertently looking for. So like if your car breaks down and you're stressing out about the fact that it's going to cost this much for repairs or you need to get another car or whatever, but you're not actually thinking about like how fun it would be to have a new car. You're thinking about the stress of having the broken car. You've entered into a scarcity mindset because you're focusing on what's wrong instead of what could be right? That scarcity mindset then points the GPS of your confirmation bias in the direction of looking for more proof and evidence that things aren't working out for you, that things are going to be expensive, that things aren't, that you need more, I guess, right? So suddenly everything starts to fill your world with proof, with confirmation that things are a little bit out of reach, a little bit too expensive. And even things that felt relatively secure, maybe even just yesterday, now might feel like they're teetering on the edge of insecurity, just at that level of emotion. So then you have this accidental scarcity mindset, which becomes a feedback loop because now you're seeing it in the world and it's being confirmed to you. And then you're keeping that emotional frequency at that level and dun, 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 right? It keeps happening. So you're, because of that, making choices and decisions based on what you notice in the world. What you notice in the world is going to be limited to whatever that emotional frequency is allowing you to see.
Where does this become metaphysical, though? This is the challenge that I'm sure you get. People go, where, this is all great. You can explain it in these psychological terms, but where is the magic piece of it? What is the difference that makes the difference?
I don't think there is any magic to it. I think this is sort of like a human right. We all have this. We are all energetic beings with multidimensional consciousness, if you want to call that magic.
Yeah,
okay.
I do.
All right. So then this...
But yeah, okay. Go into that. What does that mean to you? Why is that not magical? Why might it not be magical?
Well, magic is just something that we haven't been able to explain with science yet. Right? I mean, 100 years ago, the concept of microbes that you can't, see was pretty magical. Now we have the ability to see them. There was no way we could have conceived of particles that can turn into waves based on human observation, no less, as in the double slit experiment, right? Even I guess that's the 1930s. I was going to say 50 years ago, but actually it's longer now. But so let's say 100 years ago, that was something that we wouldn't have been able to conceive of. And the average person now in 2024 still doesn't even realize that that is a thing. So it's not magical. There's science that explains a lot of this stuff, but it's just not common knowledge. Like humans have the ability to observe a photon and simply by observing it, alter it. When we're not observing it, it doesn't behave the same way. We're not touching it. All we're doing is observing it, and it alters how it shows up in the world. Now, isn't that magical? Except that we actually can measure that scientifically. It's not just quantum theory. That's quantum science. That's the mechanics. So just because a person doesn't necessarily know how it works or understand it doesn't mean it doesn't exist, No,
I do. And I know I'm throwing some hardball questions at you, but I also know that there is some people look at things as the either or. Some people look at it as the and. I mean, I would say I know your friends, Jess Marion and Sean Carson, all the intelligent hypnotist crew. For years, I mean, they even had that book with Melissa Pierce they wrote about neuroscience and NLP.
I think it was Melissa Tears.
Oh, sorry, Melissa Tears. Yes. Oh gosh. Oh, Freudian slip. Whoops. Did I mean to say that? No. Okay, we'll get into that later. No, okay, so they even wrote that book with Melissa Tears about neuroscience and NLP. And I remember even back then going, well, the NLP here is the magic, and the neuroscience is them backing up the magic. And now these two, I mean, especially Jess, I've had her on a few times talking about sacred medicine and psychedelic and all that stuff. And I'm going, okay, well, this is definitely, and I said, are you getting rid of all this neuroscience stuff? And instead it was, no, it just supports it even more.
I think so.
It just supports it even more.
Yeah.
So I do think there is something to this evolution of understanding neuroscientists. People kind of, I mean, you have Dr. Bruce Lipton as well. We were talking about the cells earlier. I mean, there are people that have had rigorous scientific backgrounds that then go, and there's something more. And I do sometimes sit here and go, yeah, atheist girl on my first date, to just dismiss this.
Well, ask her,
and say,
not that you'll ever have a second date, but if you have another first date with another atheist girl.
How dare you? No, yes, go ahead.
I assumed that you didn't just because of the way you were rolling your eyes about the first date.
You're right. Okay. Go ahead. No, I'm
but,
kidding.
When people have that sort of limited, narrow-minded perception of things simply because they don't know what's outside of it, otherwise known as the Dunning-Kruger effect, because they think they know everything there is to know about a thing only because they don't know what they don't know. And I run into people like this frequently in one particular group on Facebook that's full of certain hypnotists from a certain country that love to give me a hard time and harass me. But that's okay. I can hold my own. I'm like, bring it on. Because all it does is reveal to people where you're coming from. And they ought to have that option and opportunity to be like, I don't think I want to.
Yes.
Anyway, but so here's the question. What about all of the research that has been done into the human interaction with random number generators? This is absolutely qualified, quantified, empiricized. It's been tested time and time again. It's been replicated multiple times over many, many, many years, decades now. So random number generators that are set to just generate zeros or ones and set to a random algorithm, which might sound a little bit counterintuitive because once you enter into an algorithm, it's not particularly random. But in this case, it's as random as it can possibly be, okay? Enter a human just watching it on a screen. They're not touching a keyboard. They're not doing anything. They're not directly interacting in any physical capacity. If that human is told to think of zeros, statistically, more zeros will begin showing up. If that human is told to think about more ones, statistically, more ones will show up. And interestingly, if a human is told to think about more zeros, but then thinks about more ones instead, we'll see that too.
Interesting. Is that in now mainstream science isn't talking about that, are they?
They could be, they should be. You know, it's you can look it up. There's so many different there's one out of Germany, there's one out of Harvard, there's one out of Stanford, there's one out of Cambridge. There's like, this has been done many, 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 many times. And every time it's replicated, it still comes up statistically significant. The one variable being just human observation, human thoughts, intentional thoughts. Yeah. Which is, I mean, pretty interesting. I think it's the phrase is statistically significant deviations from chance when you enter the human variable into the mix. So consider that if we can do that with zeros and ones in a random number generator, what happens when we just trust that the world is a safe place with lots of opportunities and abundance, and then just look for evidence of that?
Whoa, that is beautiful. That is a very nice thing to think about.
What's the worst that could happen?
Yeah,
Nothing.
I like it. Well, also because it's, you know, if we think about computers and how they're all zeros and ones, and even this age of AI where it's like taking zeros and ones to the most exponential place we couldn't have even conceived of it going. And then you think, well, reality, if it is not a simulation, which I'm not necessarily convinced it's not after this conversation, but you know, the reality seems to be like a super hyper advanced version of even the most advanced GPT AI to visual whatever it is. Then you have to realize that your mind could be influencing so many digits at any one time. I mean, it entirely really supports this idea
we are the programmers.
Yeah.
And
well, okay, so tell me this.
The way I see it is like, that's not the brain, that's the mind. So the brain is part of the physical machine. The mind is the consciousness that comes and drives the machine.
Yeah.
So you can have the vehicle without the driver. There are people that are alive that, you know, are maybe in a coma or, you know, in some other capacity, like they don't have the consciousness component fully plugged in. But I do see it as two different things, at least for now, and that's subject to change. I've also recently been gifted with some information that, you know, if you want to bring that simulation theory back in, that let's look at it as like a video game. You know, you have the player, which would be the higher consciousness, and then the avatar, which would be us. And so that player is manipulating the skill set and the charisma points and the, you know, whatever else for each avatar, so that that avatar interacts with their world in whatever fashion. And what happens if that, and this is, I'm just going to leave at this and you guys can do whatever you want with it. We'll have to have another podcast, I think. But what happens if that player, higher consciousness, is operating multiple avatars?
Oh, whoa.
And every
Is that
once
the
in a while,
quantum
they get to
journey?
interact with each other, maybe to activate each other in some way, maybe to support each other in some way, maybe to course correct in some way.
That's
And maybe that feels a little bit
interesting.
like a soulmate or a twin flame, or, you know.
Wow. Okay, we're definitely, I should have had you on Valentine's Day. Wait, this is all very interesting. First of all, everybody needs to check out Quantum Journeys Hypnosis.com. If you want to get in on this, and I think you should, this is some very interesting stuff. I mean, you've got this, how long is the course?
It's 120 mini modules.
Yeah.
Give or take, because I pop in and do live events, from time to time. And the minimum amount of time that you can take as far as International Hypnosis Association's credentialing process is 3 months. So 90 days from the date that you join is the soonest that you could get your certification. It's a dual certification program. So you get a certification from me saying that you are now a certified Quantum Journeys Hypnotist, but you also can get another certification from International Hypnosis Association certifying you as a hypnotherapist. So you get two.
Nice.
For one. Mm-hmm.
I love that.
Yep. And I would say that, the soonest is 3 months. It seems to be taking most people about 6. And then there's some people who aren't doing it specifically to certify. They're just doing it because they're fascinated with the topic, with the subject. They want to learn more. They're not planning on, using it professionally. There's 153 students right now.
I was going to say, has anyone gone through it that has said, look, Kryssa, you're never going to get me to believe that there are entities and spirits. However, I think what you're doing is interesting enough, and it could elicit change that I'm going to start bringing elements of it into my practice.
I don't tell them that they have to believe in any of that. In fact, I say this could all just be a model, could all be a metaphor. And if that's the case, that's okay too, because we still get the results. So maybe a past life regression is something that your subconscious mind comes up with so that you can feel like it's so far in the past, it no longer has to affect you. And if we can clear it up and resolve it way, way back there, then it no longer has any impact here, any negative impact. Maybe that's the case. There's no way to scientifically measure this at this point. However, while I do have students that will say that prior to having their 6 practice sessions, I've never had a single student come back after having their 6 practice sessions saying this is all a bunch of hooey. I have them come back and go, I had no idea that this was available to me, that I had these particular skills, talents, whatever, that this is how I'm wired, that I can, talk to the different aspects of my consciousness, my subconscious, as well as my higher consciousness, as well as the cells of my body, as well as your energetic body or inner, So there are people who will at the outset be like, I thought maybe this was going to be something I could utilize, but I think it's just a little too far out there. And then I'll just say, it could just all be a metaphor. Why don't you just keep going, get some practice sessions and see what happens. When they are the practice client is when they start to go like, okay, because they themselves are experiencing it. It's not like the practitioner is saying, and now you're in this lifetime. All we're doing is asking questions. Where are you? What's happening? Who are you with? Why are we here? What's the lesson? Where do we need to go next? We're asking the questions. The client is giving the answers. It's coming directly from their own mouths.
Yeah. I saw something on your website that made me curious, which is that you said, you don't need, or you know what it is? It's for, if you want to, you have an ebook about, you can sign up.
It's a fun little ebook. It's just a neuroscience thing. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But, it works even if you have trouble visualizing or neurodivergent or skeptical. I'm going, what happens if I go through Quantum Journeys Hypnosis with those qualities? I mean, I think I'm a terrible hypnotic subject.
That's my specialty, by the way. We should have a session.
Whoa, I love these promises. I love these promises.
No, it is because
people have tried.
I am not a very visual person. And this, in the very first hypnosis school that I went through, the first training course, that one was very visual heavy. And I would just constantly get pulled right out of like any effective trance state, because as soon as they say, and you see your feet going down the stairs, I'd be like, no, I don't. I see the backs of my eyelids. I don't see any feet,
Yes.
you know?
Yes.
And so I have designed Quantum Journeys Hypnosis around that. What we do is we work with whatever senses the person is bringing to us. So for me, I'm very auditory, kinesthetic, and cognitive. And I add cognitive because it is a sense. It's not traditionally acknowledged as one, but sometimes, even though I can't see, like close my eyes and see like the contents of my refrigerator, I still know what's in there. So I call that a cognitive sense, right? But for me to get into a really nice deep state of trance, kinesthetic and you know, sound, those are the two things that work for me. I don't need to have a visual sense, and so nobody does with this. And skeptics, I love skeptics, because I'm not, like, my ego isn't involved in the process of proving to them that this works. All I'm doing is taking them into a space where they can explore it themselves, and I ask questions. That's all I do. So I love skeptics, because as long as they're willing to allow themselves to have the experience, they will have some sort of mind-blowing experience. If at every turn they purposefully go in to try and analyze and disprove it, well, that's the experience they're going to have. But if they go in with like an open-minded, like, I wonder what's going to happen, where are we going to go, I want to explore this, I'm just going to be open, maybe it's all a metaphor. If they just go in with that attitude, they're going to have a mind-blowing experience. You included, Craig.
I have so many more questions for you. I mean, no, this is good. You'll definitely be a repeat guest, I believe.
Hopefully it won't take us a year or a year and a half or whatever it was this last time.
No, I mean, there's so many interesting things that have popped up. You know, one thing I wanted to circle back from way earlier that I kind of just want to understand from your perspective before we wrap is, you know, you mentioned earlier that sometimes in a quick moment, you know, if you're trying to help somebody overcome fear of flying, you'll do the NLP technique and it'll maybe stay for that moment, but it won't last.
Right.
In your experience, I mean, I know these quantum, you recommend around 3 sessions for the Quantum Journeys Hypnosis. What have you noticed is the difference overall out of all your years of sessions between change that is temporary and change that lasts forever?
Oh, well, okay, that's easy. Temporary change is at the level of the machine. Permanent change is at the level of consciousness.
And what are I mean, is there something as a practice, as a change? I mean, I'm asking this as a, you know, some people out there might be practitioners listening. Some people might be just trying to understand from, you know, for themselves. They're going to therapy or they're trying these different healing techniques and they're going, you know, this worked for a week, but all of a sudden now I'm stressed again. I mean, what do you think it really requires?
So let's say that you're at the top of a ski slope, okay? And there's one run that you've gone down multiple times. You know this run, it's very familiar to you, but over the years it's gotten dangerous and icy. And you know that once you get on this run, there's no way off until you crash. That would be the run of anxiety. Let's call that the run of anxiety, right? So you're at the top of the hill. There's all these other potential runs, but they're not familiar. You might even have to create one from scratch. So when you're working with the level of the machine, of the brain, these are like, that's a neural pathway. Here's another potential neural pathway. Here's another one. This one, maybe you've gone down a couple times, but you're not as familiar. And so every time you're at the top, you just automatically, without even thinking about it, start to go down this one. And you're like, wait a minute. That's what hypnosis can help with, is getting mindful and going, I don't have to go that way. I can go over here. But on this side, I can create a brand new run. And maybe this one can connect with another one that I've already created. And it goes to a really beautiful, happy place instead of crashing, right? If you're working with the level of consciousness, you can actually like pick the whole thing up and move it to a whole new mountain. Doesn't even have to be on the same hill. That's how I see it. That's the metaphor I see it as. So there's the neural pathways, and there's going to be some that are just super easy to keep going down, and you might be able to turn it off for a little while and kind of go down this one. But then some really triggering thing happens. You go into autopilot, you forget you have those options, and you accidentally go down the same one again. That's where I think the shorter term hypnosis works. If you allow yourself to take that shorter term hypnosis and create the new neural pathways and continue to practice mindfulness every day, that way that old run just gets snowed over enough times you forget it's even there. It's no longer familiar. And you've got all these other runs. But I don't think that very many people really continue to practice. They kind of almost put the onus of responsibility on the practitioner's shoulders instead of their own. The practitioner can help you create the new neural pathways, can help support them, can help create that change in your perceptions, but it's up to the client to go out in the world and utilize those tools, put them to use.
But if you're working at the level of consciousness,
yeah, then we can actually just rearrange that whole hill. Like it doesn't even have to be a ski slope. It can be a meadow. It can be like we can go over here and have a whole different hill. You know, at the level of consciousness, we can alter the terrain that we are even interacting with. You've heard the quote, "The map is not the territory," right?
Of course. Yeah.
So that would be at the level of the subconscious mind, which is the neural pathways and all that, the machine. The subconscious mind and the machine are very like intertwined in my understanding of things. So the cells of the body, subpersonalities, you know, the different parts that are protecting us, those the physical body and the subconscious are very, very intertwined. And they're all about protection. They don't care if you're happy. They just want you to be alive. That's their whole job. You can't go to them to look for happiness because that's not where it lives. You have to go elsewhere. So that's where I say, yeah, if you start interacting, and both are necessary. I don't think it's like one or the other, but I think traditional hypnosis completely ignores the higher realms of consciousness or the other realms of consciousness, and it works only at the level of the machine.
Yeah.
I think we have to.
Well, what's interesting is that you mentioned, 5 to 7 minute induction. I'm going, okay, you know what? It is really, it really is the dealer's choice at a certain point once you've got them in a trance state. Not saying now, I do believe that your induction is specifically catered to then be able to speak to
I teach
directly.
Other inductions too that are more traditional, just so that people don't get bored. But yeah,
I guess I wonder, does it end up, I mean, could we technically just all trance people out and then be like, okay, I'm going to call on this consciousness today, then I'm going to call on this uncle today instead, and then I'm going to call on this, I mean, I kind of feel like we could really call anybody.
It's not a one size fits all. So I would say with a lot of people, absolutely you can do that. You could even do it at the level of almost no trance, or like the waking active trance. You could do that. Little kids could do it for sure.
Oh yeah.
Artists seem to be quite capable of that. But people that are highly analytical, it's not like they have to do that, but they kind of need permission. I think that's what it comes down to. They need permission to get their analytical mind out of the way. And so that's what this particular induction does, is it gives them that permission. It says, yeah, don't you want kind of a break, a little vacation? Let's just put you over. You can observe if you want, but just like, you're going to get the most out of this if you don't intrude. Just stay out of the way,
yeah.
You know? And I think that permission of, oh, I don't have to make sense of everything. I don't have to analyze it all and figure out what it means, which is honestly a trauma response in a lot of cases, I think, So, but giving them permission to like, you know what, maybe it's all a model. Maybe it's all just a metaphor. Maybe it's just a fun little bedtime story that your own imagination comes up with. But either way, you're going to have a positive experience. I guarantee that you're going to have a positive experience as long as you allow for that. So give yourself that permission. It doesn't have to all make sense.
Right. Well, I just think it's interesting, too, what you said before. What's really sticking out to me in this conversation is the difference between this delicate dance that has a little bit of manipulation involved with the subconscious and the unconscious versus you just having a direct conversation. It's almost like the subconscious is a cat And this is like, hey, just speak to the dog. Hey, dog,
What-
I'm talking to you. What's the better purpose? What's the bigger purpose? Sit, roll over. You hear? Like, I don't know. It feels more like, why does
Well,
it,
the
why
subconscious is
does
all
this,
about protecting you. So that's why you have to be a little bit sneaky about it. You have to get in there and be like, hey, I
mm,
know that you've had what you consider proof every day that the way you're doing things works because look, Greg's still alive, right? That's your whole job, is just to make sure he stays alive because you're very interconnected with his physical body,
yeah, you gotta
you know?
compliment it a
Yeah.
lot
And
to
you have
get
to be like, hey,
change. You
great
gotta,
job. Thanks so much. There's another way to do this, but like, let's look at it like a job promotion, right? You have to, because it's all tied up in the
right.
ego. So, like, what if you just go beyond the ego and just say, like, okay, higher self, can you look down inside of Greg and see all those little subconscious parts that are kind of wounded, or the ego things that are like saying he's not good enough, or, second guessing himself? And the higher self is like, oh, yeah, I see that. Yeah. What can we do about that? Is it in Greg's highest good to go ahead and just like kind of clear some of that stuff up? And it'll be like, yeah, okay, we can take care of this and this and not that one yet, because he's still got some stuff to learn there, but we'll take care of these other ones. And it'll tell you
Mm,
straight up. And I'll be like, what method are you using? And it will tell me. And it's always different. Sometimes it's like shining them up, like cleaning them up and like putting them back. Other times it's like sewing them up with like energetic threads until they're like, repaired and then putting them back. Other times it's like just giving them love and filling them with light and then putting them back. So I never know what method they're going to use, but I just ask the questions.
are there any times when you would say, hey, don't call in the higher consciousness, work with the
Oh,
subconscious?
yeah, absolutely. Oftentimes the very first session is going to be a lot of subconscious work. Not everybody is able to immediately access aspects of their higher consciousness. If there's a whole lot of trauma, then they're going to have very protective subconscious parts that will not allow them to access that, especially if any of the trauma has come about because in the past they did have that access. So like little kids that had, clairvoyance, clairaudience, or, imaginary friends or things like that, which I was one of them. If they got bullied, if they got harassed, if they got teased, if they got belittled, if they got, denied, invalidated, then there's going to be some subconscious parts that are like guards at the gate saying, absolutely no way. Remember what happened last time? And that shit sucked. We're not letting you. So then I have to work with them and kind of let that see that it's okay. And I have to be sneaky. That's when I'm dealing with the person's subconscious in those protective ego states, I have to be a little bit sneaky and manipulative, but for a higher purpose. Once we can get past that and have that direct voice with the higher realms of consciousness, I don't have to be so sneaky. I can just say, hey, what's up with this?
Yeah,
What do we need to
it's
do
much
now? Where do
sure.
we go now? How do we release this or repair that or call in this, or it's and it'll just straight up say like, oh, we need to go over here. Oh, I'm going to take you to that. Or suddenly the person will just be in a whole new memory or different situation. Or my favorite is when they just naturally go to the Akashic records and they get like a data upload, and that's always fun.
Yeah. Okay, so Kryssa, look, someone goes to your website, quantumjourneyshypnosis.com. They want to be a practitioner, but then all of a sudden they're told, hey, have you looked into rapid transformational therapy? What would you tell them?
Well, like I said, there's 8 billion people on the planet. So there's probably some people that would really benefit from rapid transformational therapy. I have studied that and I found that it just wasn't enough for my purposes. I needed more education than what that provided. But
God, what a diplomatic answer.
I think that it
What a
actually is
diplomat.
really beneficial for some people. And I do have
So you do
friends.
actually like it.
Well, I think that it can be very helpful in certain situations. I do.
It's mostly regression, right?
It's all regression. It's 100% regression. But
What in
that
the
can be really
world?
helpful in some cases. So, for example, think about a person who does have a phobia. Regression is really, really effective for that. Going back to the initial sensitizing event, or even going back to any memory that has the feelings associated with that, can be a really, really helpful tool to releasing it. I don't, however, think that it is always helpful. And I think in some cases it has a higher risk than what I'm comfortable taking of re traumatizing or re triggering trauma.
What's the most dangerous hypnotherapy training out there?
I
Do you
don't.
have an answer?
Yeah, I would say pop culture is the most dangerous
Whoa.
hypnosis out there. Not really training, but they're conditioning us constantly to think that we're ugly, to think that we're not good enough, to think that we need to buy this and that and the other in order to be somehow more worthy of existence. I think that, yeah, the culture, not even patriarchy. There we go. Actually, I'm going to change my
Whoa, the
answer and
page.
say patriarchy is the most dangerous hypnosis out there.
Oh my gosh, everybody go see the Barbie movie. Yes. No, I mean this is a very interesting interview. Kryssa Marie Bowman. You can learn all about her at well, we'll link to your
I have two
website,
websites.
Quantum.
One's
Yeah, you have
KryssaMarieBowman.com,
two.
and then the other one is Quantum Journeys Hypnosis.com.
Quantum Journeys Hypnosis.com, Kryssa Marie
If you're looking for a session with
Bowman.com.
me specifically, then it would be KryssaMarieBowman.com.
Tell me this. I need to know what's up with the cowgirl hat.
Oh, well, I lived in Montana for 30 years. How do you live in Montana for 30 years and not have a cowgirl hat?
Kryssa just sometimes pops up. Sometimes she's wearing the cowgirl hat. Sometimes she's not.
Oh, there was about 6 weeks last summer where I had dreadlocks. So, it's always, I like to change my biological avatar. It's fun. Why not?
I like it. I'm just wondering, are you like the rodeo hypnotist?
Oh, well,
I mean,
I do sometimes consider myself like the multidimensional consciousness wrangler, because I'm like, all I'm doing is trying to make sure that we like get whatever the client wants out of the session. And so I'm like kind of over here, just making sure we don't necessarily need to go too far into left field. Right. So maybe they're a starseed. How much time do we really need to spend in Arcturus? Is that going to benefit them here now? Maybe, maybe not. If not, then it's my job to wrangle to keep them more in the arena of what's going to be beneficial and helpful to their current 3D human avatar.
I love it. I love it. Are you right now sensing any entities I need to look out for?
No, but we're also on Zoom. It's a little, sometimes I can't really feel the energy through,
Okay.
not like that anyway.
You're not just like one of these psychics that is always picking up things that's like,
no, and I don't want to be. That sounds exhausting. If I'm walking through a physical space, I'll pick up on them. However, every once in a while, they will make themselves known, like in a Zoom session that I'm on. If they don't,
you ever see like an orb on a Zoom?
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes that stuff happens.
Oh yeah, you should check out my YouTube channel. There's all kinds of crazy things that happen. There was another one where a woman became illuminated from within her skin and she turned like glowing, kind of like white.
That's on your YouTube?
Glowing. Yeah. There's another one where an orb comes in the window and settles upon the person and then like leaves again. Yeah, there's some interesting things that happen. But I did have a session, actually this has happened a lot, where there's some kind of entity that it kind of knows I'm coming, and that means, it's a threat to its host, parasitic existence on the host. And so it will cause like technical difficulties, like the camera will go out or the sound will go out or it'll get really glitchy or things like that. And I don't assume that that's the case every time I have weird glitchiness, but there's one group that I run every Monday. It's a healing group that's based on Dr. Lynn McTaggart and Dr. Joe Dispenza's like work, like the Healing Power of 8 and the Intention Experiment. Anyway, what we'll find is that when we are dealing with somebody who has entity issues, we'll get all kinds of weird, glitchy things. And it's been happening for 3 years. So I've kind of come to the conclusion, like, okay, if it only happens when we're dealing with that, and it happens repeatedly in this group, then there's a strong likelihood that that's what's going on. I don't always assume it, but yeah, it's kind of like, I wonder.
Interesting. Okay, look, we teased this at the beginning, but you've been so diplomatic. You've been so cordial. I mean, you've truly not really. I think you were the harshest to Mrs. Pendleton of all the people here. So the final question is this: what do you think right now is your most controversial view in the field of hypnotherapy and NLP? Just air it right now. Let's make some people mad before we go. Let's.
Said it. I think that regression to cause is one of the more dangerous styles of hypnosis.
That's the most controversial?
Yeah.
Not that, let's see, certifications are BS. I'm trying to think what else there might
I
be out
think
there.
that, I'm not a black and white thinker. I'm just not. So I also have this sort of perception that whatever a person is going through, they need to go through for whatever reason, at least to some degree. So, like, if somebody is attracted to a trainer who's very ego based, there's something about that they need to learn out of that interaction. I don't know what it is, but it's not up to me to decide. It's not up to me to judge. Let them have their experience. So yeah, if you want to get me to try and say something awful about anybody, I don't know. I think you're going to have to really have somebody do
Does
something
Scott
awful to
Sandland
me.
have nice teeth? Oh no,
I don't
sorry, I'm
remember.
just
I don't have an opinion on that. Sorry.
that's fair. That's fair. No. This is a very,
There are
very
plenty of people out there
legitimate.
that are very polarized about me, and they let me know that. There's definitely people out there that are either on the pedestal, like putting me on a pedestal side, which I try to like stop doing that. And then the people who are like, "Oh, you're so full of crap, Kryssa," and I'm like, "Oh, whatever. That's your perception. You're not my audience." you know?
I was going to say, is there anything you want to clear the record about right now?
No, I think that just my existence will do that. I don't have to define myself.
Whoa, that is a badass answer. My existence clears my record by Kryssa Marie Bowman. I'd buy that.
Huh. I'll have to come up with some content for that record.
maybe there's nothing else. Maybe there's nothing else besides that. No, okay, that's very cool. Yeah. Well, look, Kryssa Marie Bowman of Quantum Journeys Hypnosis.com. Such an interesting conversation. I loved having you on.
Yeah,
This was
thank
great.
you. This was fun. This was a lot of fun. Thanks, Doug. I'm sorry it took so long to get on here, but yeah, thank you.
No, it's all very good. And you know what? I appreciate that you are. Look, to me, there is something magical about hypnosis. I don't know if I would say magic with a K, but it is definitely, it's magical enough that people still go, nah, it ain't real.
I think there's something magical about just being like alive on a little blue planet that's 3 rocks from a star in a solar system that's part of a larger galaxy that's just one of billions of galaxies. Like, the fact that we're even here, like, there's nothing mundane about that. It's all magical. But I just don't consider magical in the sense that that it's not available to us, or that you have to have some special magical powers or skills. I think our birthright as humans is to be the artists and architects of our own journeys.
Beautiful. Well said. Well said. Love it. Down with the patriarchy. Kryssa Marie Bowman, thanks so much for coming on the show. This has been great.
Thanks, Greg. Take care. Bye-bye. It was an honor to be on here too. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. How do I did it stop recording? It's still recording, isn't it? I am trying